I don't know if you've seen Amnesty International report, but basically the detailing the arrest of doctors, health workers in Gaza, and some of them has endured torture. On December 27th, Dr. Hussam Abu Sufiya, he is the doctor for Kamal Adwan Hospital, was arrested. And till now, we don't know what is his whereabouts. And there is fear from Amnesty International for his life. What is the White House doing to talk with a close ally like yours, which is Israel, to make sure that his life is spared and he's safe?
So on that particular matter, I don't have anything to share on any conversation on that specific amnesty situation. Obviously, when it comes to humanitarian assistance, we continue certainly to be concerned of the lack of humanitarian assistance.
So the Israeli terrorist force, also known as the IDF, has finally admitted that its terrorists currently operating in Gaza did kidnap Dr. Hussam Abu Sufiya, the director of Kamal Adwan Hospital in North Gaza. But see the mischief by the BBC, my former employer, and its representative Emir Nadir. The headline reads, Israel confirms it is holding Gaza hospital chief Abu Safia. So for the BBC, which is funded by your hard-earned money, called the license fee, Israel is holding Dr. Safia as if he had lost his way and Israeli terrorists found him somewhere and they are now holding him until someone comes to get him. This is the same BBC which uses the term hostage at the drop of the hat when the victims are Israelis. No wonder an online campaign has now been launched against BBC's Middle East editor Rafi Berg, who is being dubbed as a self-proclaimed cheerleader and a fanboy of Benjamin Netanyahu, currently wanted by the International Criminal Court for crimes against humanity. Dr. Safiya's arrest dominated the proceedings of the United Nations Security Council on Friday, which is yesterday, when Dr. Tanya Haj Hassan, who previously worked in Gaza, made a passionate speech highlighting Israeli barbarism.
And what happened next after that? After the Israeli military raided the hospital, people were blindfolded and undressed. Patients on crutches were put on the ground as Israeli soldiers took celebratory pictures with the surviving healthcare workers in humiliating positions. The hospital was burned down and Dr. Abu Sufiya was taken, we believe, along with many colleagues. I speak to you today, like so many healthcare workers and citizens around the world, filled with grief, with anger, with frustration, and frankly, with disbelief. Disbelief that all of our repeated firsthand and utterly damning testimonies have still not moved the world to meaningful action. Disbelief that the countless addresses to the media and even here at the United Nations just 5 weeks ago, we're still here trying to convince anyone who will listen that this needs to stop. Disbelief that all previous propositions to end violence have been obstructed by the very body whose primary responsibility is supposedly to maintain international peace and security. In disbelief that on November 20th, the United States and my country of citizenship again vetoed a UN Security draft resolution that demanded an immediate and unconditional ceasefire in Gaza, despite 14 votes in favor. In disbelief that it has been one entire year this month since the International Court of Justice issued provisional measures after ruling that Israel's acts could amount to plausible genocide. And that since Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, amongst other organizations, have concluded that Israel's actions are consistent with genocide. In disbelief that we are still here after we have driven 96% of Gaza's children to believe their death is imminent, while many wish for their own death. And after 7 infants, as of yesterday, have died from hypothermia in the past week, meaning they literally froze to their death. In disbelief that we are still here when Israel's military violence has created the largest cohort of pediatric amputees in known history, largest cohort of journalists killed, the largest cohort of UN workers killed. And I shudder to even estimate the number of children who've lost their parents and have been orphaned for life. In disbelief that Israel has killed another 90 Palestinians in Gaza, at least, in the short time since I got the call last night requesting that I address you here today. We are pleading to the world, to the people and the states that make up this very body, to show us that international humanitarian law matters, that human rights are universally applied, and to stay true to the very reason that this body was created. Thank you.
If you want to watch the full video of Dr. Hassan's speech, it's here. We uploaded it yesterday. This is what Volker Turk, UN Human Rights High Commissioner, he said about Israeli war crimes in North Gaza, from where Dr. Safia was kidnapped by Israeli terrorists.
I've in fact just received a letter from the Israeli ambassador asserting that Kamal Adwan Hospital was militarized by Hamas and that Israeli forces took extraordinary measures to protect civilian life while acting on credible intelligence. Yet, Israel has not provided sufficient information to substantiate many of these claims, which are often vague and broad. In some cases, they appear to be contradicted by publicly available information. If these allegations were verified, this would raise serious concerns that Palestinian armed groups were using the presence of civilians intentionally to shield themselves from attack, which would also amount to a war crime. This is why I'm calling for independent, thorough, and transparent investigations into all Israeli attacks on hospitals, healthcare infrastructure, and medical personnel, as well as the alleged misuse of such facilities. Mr. President, I once more warn in the strongest terms about the risk of atrocity crimes being committed in the occupied Palestinian territory. I urge all those with influence to take action accordingly and to protect civilians as a matter of absolute priority.
When a reporter posed the question of Dr. Safia's kidnapping to the White House spokesperson, she expressed her ignorance. How sweet! She truly wanted us to believe that the White House, which has just approved $8 billion worth more weapons for Israel to commit more war crimes against Palestinians in Gaza, doesn't know about the kidnapping of Dr. Safia.
I don't know if you've seen Amnesty International report, but basically the detailing the arrest of doctors, health workers in Gaza, and some of them has endured torture. On December 27th, Dr. Hussam Abu Sufiya, he is the doctor for Kamal Adwan Hospital, was arrested. And till now, we don't know what is his whereabouts. And there is fear from Amnesty International for his life. What is the White House doing to talk with a close ally like yours, which is Israel, to make sure that his life is spared and he's safe?
So on that particular matter, I don't have anything to share on any conversation on that specific amnesty situation. Obviously, when it comes to humanitarian assistance, we continue certainly to be concerned of the lack of humanitarian assistance. This is something that we talk directly with our Israeli counterparts in the government. And so we will continue to do that. You've seen Secretary Blinken and others who have gone into the region and have those conversations with Israel about that. I don't have anything to share about that particular instance. I would have to talk to the team, but that is something that we certainly take very seriously when it comes to humanitarian aid and humanitarian workers being able to be allowed to the job. But I can't speak to that particular report. I have to talk to our team. I want to be really, really mindful on that.
But would you agree that arresting doctors in hospitals is a violation of human rights. And
Again, I want to
international
be
law.
super mindful because you're asking me about a particular incident that has occurred, and I just want to make sure I have all of the information. I don't want to give you an answer without having all the information, and so I'm just going to be super mindful and leave it there.
Now, this is not the first time that Israeli terrorists have targeted Kamal Adwan Hospital. This hospital was previously raided in December 2023, with several medical staff arbitrarily detained and disappeared. Back then, Dr. Safia was kidnapped and interrogated briefly. At that time, not a single Israeli terrorist accused Dr. Safia of anything. This is important. Why? Because Israeli terrorists are now accusing him of being a Hamas functionary. And the likes of the BBC are happy to parrot that Israeli line. According to Amnesty International, after the initial raid on Kamal Adwan Hospital, which put the hospital out of service, Dr. Safia and other staff managed, with the support of international organizations, to get the hospital to function again. It played an indispensable role in treating children suffering from malnutrition and dehydration-related issues. The hospital also received those wounded from a series of Israeli attacks on starving people as they waited for flour trucks, known as flour massacres. Between the months of February 2024 and September 2024, Amnesty International said Dr. Safia was the go-to source for human rights and humanitarian organizations investigating the situation of the healthcare sector in North Gaza. He was providing accurate, non-sensationalist and credible information, coordinating with international health organizations, providing media briefings, all whilst obviously working as a dedicated pediatrician and dealing with his own tragedy of losing his 15-year-old son to Israeli terrorists. The only time even the Israeli terrorist brought up the Hamas link against him was following his disappearance last Friday. Israel had first said that it had not abducted Dr. Safia, but the IDF terrorists were forced to perform a U-turn after an Israeli human rights group approached the Israeli High Court. Amnesty International have now said that Dr. Abu Sufiya's unlawful detention is emblematic of the broader attacks on the healthcare sector in Gaza and Israel's attempt to annihilate it. It is part and parcel of Israel's genocidal intent. Dr. Abu Sufiya has been acting as a leading voice for the healthcare sector in the north of Gaza since October and refusing to abandon the hospital and his patients. This despite the fact that Israeli terrorists killed his 15-year-old son in a drone attack in October. But despite his personal tragedy, this man refused to leave the place and stood against Israel's genocidal act. His kidnapping by Israeli terrorists and along with that of hundreds of Palestinian medical staff further provides another shining evidence of Israel's genocidal intent. None of the medical staff abducted by Israeli forces since November 2023 from Gaza during raids on hospitals and clinics has been charged or put before a trial. Those released after enduring unimaginable torture were never charged and did not stand trial. Those still detained continue to remain held without charges or trial under inhumane conditions and at the risk of further torture. That's it from me. Thank you very much for your support of this platform and our journalism on buymeacoffee.com and Patreon. If you too think that our journalism is worth supporting, then you too should consider becoming part of it. In the meantime, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so because that's one of the many ways you can support independent journalism. God bless you all.